Today, let's talk about works in progress. I've got lots of things going and match that yarn. I am so excited to share this with you all. It's been so much fun to do. So let's get started. Hello everyone, my name is Carista Lowe and I am the owner and dyer at Sweet Mountain Crafts. This is Sweet Mountain Crafts Fibercast number 11. I'm so excited that you're here today and look forward to sharing with you all kinds of things that I've been working on. I'm a little bit all over the place today as I have lots of different projects that I've been doing and lots of things behind the scenes. I am located in Cody, Wyoming, in the mountains of northwestern Wyoming. We have had some cold days. We've had a little bit of snow off and on here and there since the last podcast. And today is March 18th. It's the afternoon of March 18th, so this podcast will probably be posted by tomorrow, Saturday, March 19th. But I wanted to make sure that I had a moment here to share with you guys before I get busy with weekend plans. Welcome back to any returning viewers. I'm so glad that you're here, and I'm so excited for new viewers to have come and found me. I hope you find something here that you love and that you can relate to and that you look forward to hearing more about soon. What I'm wearing today, again, I'm wearing a store-bought sweater. It is not anything super exciting. It's another Eddie Bauer. This is one that I purchased a number of years ago. It is just a super comfortable sweater, and I knew I was going to be super busy today. I figured it'd be a great opportunity to just wear something that I enjoy, that's comfortable, and it is a knit sweater. I'm not totally sure of the fiber content, but it's one that goes through the wash on a regular basis, and I love it. I wear it often. Keeping me accountable. Let's talk a little bit about what I've been working on. So I have lots of things that I've been working on behind the scenes, a lot of business related things that aren't super exciting and fun to share on the podcast here, but I will be sharing a little bit of that coming up when I start talking shop talk. But I have had moments here and there, just brief little moments to be able to get in some knitting stitches, some crochet stitches, and a little bit of spinning. So I figured I could start with my Brioche Adventure Shawl. This is a shawl that I kind of put on hold for a couple weeks because I was using the needles, the circular needles, for a different project. But I have been able to since pick it up. And you can see here, this is where my progress keeper was at the time of the last time that I shared this on the podcast. This is where I was at. And I've made it a little bit further, not significantly further, but let's see, what number color am I on? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I'm on the 9th mini skein from the mini skein swap that I participated in. I intend to go to 16, so I'm past halfway at this point. We'll see. If 16 doesn't feel like enough, I can always add more. This is the Brioche Adventure Shawl, as I said. I'm knitting it on a US 3 or a I'm knitting it on a US 4 3.5 millimeter needle. This is my Xiaogu red lace interchangeable circular needle set that I use for a lot of my projects. I shouldn't say most, but for a lot of my projects I use these needles. And I really enjoy it. As I've stated before on another couple podcasts, the brioche stitch, I love the finish that it gives because it's super squishy. It just has a thickness to it, and yet not a heavy thickness, that I look forward to wearing this when it gets done. I think it will be a lot of fun. Yeah, just as a little teaser there of what it may look like. You can see these tags hanging off, and those obviously won't stay when I'm finished, but those tags at the moment are the tags that were on the minis from when we did the exchange, and I figured I'd leave them on there until I was completed with the shawl, just as a way to record. I don't have names or yarn colors or dyer names for all of the yarns, so when I go to record this for myself, I won't be able to mark down where which each of them are, but the ones that did come with tags, I'm keeping on the shawl. And then at the end of the project, I'll record which order and what, either who the dyer was or what the name of the color is of that yarn. So that's why there's these funny paper tags hanging off. But it's a lot of fun. I will keep picking this up and working on it. My goal is to have it done by the end of March. We shall see if that happens or not, but I think I'm headed the right direction. So just need to keep putting in some time on that and picking it up when I can. I'm following the directions of the pattern, pretty straightforward. The only difference is that I'm doing a double Dutch brioche instead of a single row brioche. So brioche stitches do where you have to, if you're doing single row, you do where you knit across with one color and then you knit across with the other color or purl, depending on which side of the project you're on. But when I do double Dutch, I do both colors at the same time. So I'm completing what would be considered one row of the brioche by holding the yarns as almost as if I were catching floats, like doing color work. So I talk about that on one of my previous podcasts a little bit more, but it's very similar to catching floats and color work. So I find that it's easier for me to just hold the yarns together and do all the way across with both yarns and then back again with both yarns instead of going a single yarn, and then back like that. So if that makes any sense. Other than this, I have had the fun of working on my Granny Ripple blanket. So this is a pattern by Yarnspirations, a free pattern online. I have again been showing this regularly on the podcast, and this one is just a super simple, straightforward. I'm so close to being done with that skein of yarn, so I'm looking forward to, it's always fun to knock another one out. That will mean that this already has taken 2 of the Caron Simply Soft to get to this point. So this blanket is quite wide, but you can see just the 2 of those has only gotten me to that point. Thankfully, I have a number of them. I'm not going to run out anytime real soon, so I'm doing fine that way. And I'm at the end of a row here. So you can see where I left off at the time of the last podcast by my progress keeper here. This is an adorable little progress keeper made by Hey Country Creations. I won that on the Rose Opal Knits podcast, actually. So that was a fun little treat to get in the mail. It's always fun to win little prizes. And this one just, somehow it seemed appropriate to be my progress keeper on this project. So this is where I'm at, and I'll keep going with this as I can. It is 2 yarns held together. So it is the Caron Simply Soft along with hand-dyed minis. They aren't all my hand-dyed minis, although there are some of mine in there, but they are minis from my stash. And you can see this ball is already starting to shrink down a little bit from being used. I'm pulling from the center, so I don't always see the color that's coming next, which makes it a fun project because I just look forward to seeing, as I'm crocheting, what color is going to show up next. I imagine this was 218 grams when I started. I imagine I will be adding to this because I can already see that I'm working through quite a bit without getting as far in the process with the blanket as I thought I would. So that'll be fun though. I look forward to adding more because I have plenty of scrap stash that I'll be able to add to this magic knot ball. The next project that I've been working on for my daughter has been going really well. This is the Frothy sweater, or Frothy pullover. It is in the Coffeehouse Knits book, and which was something I received in a trade, in a swap as well. And I've made quite a bit of progress on this from the last time I shared it. This is being knit using, again, some of my interchangeable red lace needles. It's on a US 3 or 3.25 millimeter needle. That is a needle down from what the pattern calls for, but I wanted to make sure, this is for my daughter, as I said, and I want to make sure that it fits her. So I went a needle size down to try to, and also working on the smallest adult size to make sure that it's going to fit her well. But you can see my progress. I'm so excited. This is my own yarn, hand-dyed yarn. This is on my slope sock base, which is a 2-ply yarn, which is working out beautifully in this stitch. And this is the Lush Woodbine color in slope sock, excuse me. I hope to have this restocked in the shop, this color. I just sold out of it. So hopefully I'll get some more of this restocked soon, because it's just such a pretty, I don't know if you can appreciate on the camera there, all the colors as they've come popping out, especially with this stitch. It's a fairly simple stitch for this pattern. It doesn't take a lot of time or effort as far as brain power anyway, and I'm enjoying working on it. So here's this little cat and a teacup stitch marker that I received when I purchased some D-stash from Michelle of Naughty Knitwits. So that's where it was last time, and you can see that I've probably doubled again what I had worked on. So in one podcast I doubled, and then the next podcast I've now doubled again. Love to think I could keep doubling each podcast. That's probably not realistic, but it is a fun project. Again, it doesn't take a lot of thinking, like I say. So between my Brioche adventure shawl, my granny ripple blanket, and the Frothy pullover, all of these are pretty simple, easy go-to projects for me, which is really good because as I said, I've been super busy behind the scenes with some other business related things. So I'm excited to have some projects that are just very, very easy go-to. I should say I do have this still in my slopestyle canvas bag, which has my little bit of ski there. And this is just a fun bag made by some friends of mine here in Cody. Another project that I'm working on that I had suggested probably 2 podcasts ago that I wanted to start this project. I finally got an opportunity to get started, and part of my reason for holding off was this is the 2 Sisters and Some Yarn sock set that I dyed up for, and let me show you the ball of the yarn here. There's the ball of yarn. I dyed this yarn specifically for the 2 Sisters and Some Yarn podcast, and I love how this yarn turned out. I love the colors in it. I'm so excited to be working it up, and I definitely wanted to work on Gingy Knit's pattern that she designed to go with this yarn. The pattern though, she designed both a hat and socks to go with this yarn, and they called for a US size 3. Well, as I just suggested with my Brioche adventure shawl, if I pull a needle out to use for another project, sometimes it takes me a while to get back to it. So rather than taking the needle out of the Frothy pullover shawl, which is my US size 3 currently, I decided to purchase a couple more needles in order to work on these socks. Now, the story of this is that I have been wanting to try 9-inch circulars for some time. So I decided with this project that I would make myself take the time to learn what it was to work with 9-inch circulars and see if it's something that I enjoy. As well as, since I was buying a US size 3, I figured that this would be a great time for me to have a set of needles that are set aside kind of specifically for sock knitting. And since I intend to do some more DK weight socks, which commonly would be knit on about a US size 3, I figured it was a great opportunity to add to my needle supplies a little bit and have ready to go a set of needles that I can use for DK weight, or in this case, these fingering weight socks. So this is a pattern by Gingy Knits. You can see here, I am so close to being done with this one. This is a top-down sock. You can see here, I just have the toe remaining to do. It has a beautiful lace stitch on the top of the foot. And they are shorties, which is not common for me to knit. I don't wear shorties a whole lot myself. My daughter tends to wear shorties, so if I'm knitting shorties, lots of times I'm doing them for her. But I decided to go ahead and with the shorties on this pattern because I love the way it looks where the cuff goes right down into the heel. I really like the look of that on this sock. So I went ahead and followed the pattern just as it is written. I went with the smallest size. I tend to be a bit of a loose knitter. So I went with the smallest size, which is a 54 stitch count, I believe, all the way around. But I think they're turning out very fun, very pretty. And the reason that I've stopped here at the toe is that I am typically a 2 at a time sock knitter. My main reason is that I hate to get done with one sock, not be done with the second sock, and have a really hard time picking up and casting on that second sock. Because when I get one done, it's kind of like I feel like I've completed something and it's time to move to the next project. So for a little bit of a mental game that I play with myself, I on this particular pair or set of socks, I knit the cuff for each sock. So you can see that here. I've knit the cuff on the second sock as well. I knit the heel for each sock and I just went back and forth. So I knit one cuff, knit the next cuff, knit the heel. And then I knit the body of this sock and I got it to completion. And now I'm working on the body of the second sock. I'll work it to its end and then I'll probably go back to this sock, finish the toe, and then I'll come back here and finish the toe. So I'm really enjoying how this yarn is dyeing up. I love the look of it. Actually, I'm really enjoying how this yarn is knitting up. I love the look of the dye on the yarn. You can see here there's a little bit of pooling that occurs on the foot of the sock, on the underneath side of it. But with the stitch pattern on the top, the lace pattern, it helps to break that up. So it makes it very fun. And I love just the little pops of color throughout. That was one thing that I definitely wanted to do with this dye. This is my Scree sock base, which is a 4-ply yarn. And it is for a fingering weight base. It actually is a little bit heavier of a fingering weight, which makes it actually really nice. I wasn't sure what I was going to think knitting it on a US 3 because I traditionally knit my socks on a US size 1. But I actually don't mind. There's enough floof or there's enough thickness to this yarn that it actually works really well on the US size 3. So as far as the 9-inch circulars, I'm finding that they're not all that bad. I thought I would hate them, honestly, but I really wanted to give it a try just to see what I thought, if it was going to be something that I would want to do in the future, or especially for showing other people, I guess. I love learning new things so that I can talk to other people about it or even demonstrate things, because sometimes you learn something a little bit different that can be helpful for someone else, that maybe a 9-inch circular works better than magic loop, or maybe double pointed needles work better for someone. So I like to try new things just for the opportunity to be able to help others if they are wanting to try something different that might work better for them. So I do find the only thing that can happen a little bit with the 9-inch circulars for myself is that as you're working and as you're holding the yarn, I tend to place my pinky right here in front of my work. It just kind of secures that needle for me. And with the 9-inch circulars, that hits in such a way, it kind of rubs on my pinky right about here. So every now and then I have to give my pinky a break and just kind of let it relax on top of my knitting rather than under my knitting. Or I told my daughter, or I just can develop a callus, because as we know with all good guitar players or anyone else that uses their fingers regularly, the more you use them, the more calloused it's going to get and the less it's going to aggravate. So I suppose that I either need to develop some calluses or get accustomed to holding my needles just a little bit different so that I don't get that rub spot on my pinky. But other than that, you can see that when I'm holding them, most of my fingers are on the project. Or like I said, I might put this pinky underneath and this one might kind of float in the air. but I find that it's not altogether bad. I might try filming myself in the future working with these needles just so you can kind of see how I hold them. But yeah, I will definitely keep working on 9-inch circulars. This is all being held in one of my own me-made bags, Japanese knot bag or clover knot. Well, Japanese knot. I don't know that this is a true clover knot bag, but one that I made a number of years ago. And actually it's quite appropriate because I have my 2 sisters in some yarn pin on the bag. So it feels appropriate that that project would be in that bag. That is part of the 2 Sisters in Some Yarn make-along. I've been participating a little bit in that and having fun watching what other people have been doing for that as well. The next thing that I'm going to talk about, I actually don't have with me. So I'm going to do a little talking over video here. I've had the opportunity to sit down at my wheel again, and I've been working with some Sweet Mountain Crafts fiber. So this is some Pullover fiber that I don't know what happened with this dye job, but in this one in particular, the fibers started to kind of fall apart in the pan. So it made for a really ugly looking braid. Actually, I didn't even try to braid it because it was all kind of all over the place. But that's great because on those, I just get to consider that maybe a loss for the business, but a gain for me. So I got to sit and spin. I actually am part of a spinning group and had fun not only spinning at home, but also taking my wheel in and spinning with a group of ladies, and got a little bit of progress on my spinning. The next thing that I'm going to show, unfortunately, again, I don't have here with me because this is on my loom. So again, I'm going to just talk and show. I have had a floor loom for a little bit of time. I, at some point, need to go through and share some more images of the loom itself, but I keep putting off and putting off and putting off warping it up. I am a new weaver on a loom like this, so I have a lot to learn. But this first little bit, you're seeing me wrap the warp. So I'm just warping, and in this case, I'm using some Sweet Mountain yarn, cotton yarn that I've had listed in my shop for some time, but I decided to go ahead and take some of this yarn and try it out as a warp. So I'm warping it on my counter in my kitchen. I have a large island that works well for that. Eventually I will probably get a warping mill, but for now this is what I had set up. It made a beautiful braided warp. I love the look of this as it's all braided together. And then I worked to wind it on my loom. Unfortunately, I thought I had the camera rolling while I was winding it on. I didn't. So here I just have a little bit of video for you of me winding it, or after it's wound on, or just at the tail end of winding it on. At this point, I haven't gone any further with that warp. I look forward to getting it all threaded and ready to go. And then I'll just be using a white cotton yarn to go as my weft back and forth. And the main reason for this is that I just want to play, I want to learn, and one of the best ways that I find to learn something new is just to play with it. So this is a brand new to me adventure. It takes a little bit of thinking and a little bit of working outside of my own comfort zones, I guess, in order to figure this out, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. I'm looking forward to seeing what I can do, and I'll be sharing with you guys on future podcasts what I'm able to create. See how it goes. We'll see what I think. I mean, it may be a complete mess. I might have to scrap the whole thing, but in the process, I will have learned. And that's the whole point of what I'm doing with this project. So, woohoo, I made it. So this week for Woohoo, I made it. I don't have any finished knitting or crocheting or any projects like that, but I have some kind of unique stories. So one of the first things that I'm going to share is corned beef. I thought it'd be fun, since we just celebrated St. Patrick's Day yesterday, I thought it'd be fun to share on here a recipe that I found online through Grow, Forage, and Ferment, a website that shared how to make corned beef on your own at home using no nitrates. So I loved this idea. I found this probably about 3 years ago now, I think I came across this information, and I decided to go ahead and put it to practice. And it turned into one of the most lovely corned beefs that I've ever had. So I decided that that was going to become an annual tradition of ours. And of course, being a common dish for St. Patrick's Day, it's a good time of year for me to just plan to make it for my family. So this year, I even put it in my calendar as a reminder to buy the brisket and get it brining, because it has to sit in brine for 5 to 7 days before you're actually going to cook. And that means collecting all your supplies and your materials, including the meat and the pickling seasonings, and putting them all together. Here's a photo of the pickling seasonings. I had some of those things on hand, but we had to run to the store for a couple others. But you put the meat in a brine and you let it sit for 5 to 7 days. Unfortunately, I didn't follow it up with a photo. I'll try and insert a photo from a previous year maybe, but I did not take pictures this year. We had friends over and it was just a really busy time and I forgot to take pictures. So I think that happens to all of us, but the resulting meat was delicious. We still have leftovers, which are always fun to have leftovers in the fridge of yummy, good food. So it turned out very well, and the recipe for that meat is listed in the description box below. So be sure to look down through and find my the recipe that I follow for my corned beef if you're interested in years to come. Another thing that woohoo I got done is we finally got some seeds planted to get some indoor starts going. So we have a greenhouse. For any of you that have been following me on Instagram for some time, then you would know that I will occasionally pop in images or video possibly of my greenhouse. And so to do that, again, living in northern Wyoming at a high elevation, we have to start our seeds all indoors. And well, I shouldn't say all indoors. We have to start select seeds indoors primarily, and you'll see in this little bit of a video or this these images that they are primarily tomato seeds and pepper seeds at this point. We will eventually add to that probably some cucumber seeds and some other things that we like to start inside. There are a few things I can direct sow. I typically do a direct sow of all my squash and some of my other, onion, garlic, that kind of stuff just ends up going directly outside. But yeah, so woohoo, we got some seeds planted, which is always exciting to know that there's going to be fresh vegetables in the days ahead. One more thing that I wanted to say that I got done, which is kind of a funny, silly little thing. I knit socks a lot often. I knit for myself, I knit for my kids. Occasionally I knit for friends or as gifts for others, but I knit a lot of socks. And here I have a pair of socks. These were recently worn and haven't been washed, so they're not in the most pristine of shape, but here is the pair of socks that I like to wear for St. Patrick's Day. I received this yarn in a swap, or I'm not sure if it was fiber share possibly, or I forget now where I received this. This is a nomadic yarn, self-striping yarn that I received, and it was called Cookies and Cream, I think was the colorway, suggestive of a Christmas sock set. But when I got it, it made me think so much more of St. Patrick's Day. So I have, I knit that up. I put orange heels on that because I am of a Protestant faith. So I had to include a little bit of the orange of the Irish flag on these socks. But I wear these usually only a little bit every year because I tend to wear them around St. Patrick's Day more than any other time. Well, I put them on for St. Patrick's Day that morning, and I had some stuff to do in town all day, so I put the socks on, was getting ready to go, and I noticed I had a hole in a toe. Now, I am not typically a sock darner. I don't love darning socks. I think, about the time that a sock starts to wear out, maybe I'm ready to be done with that, put some new fresh socks in my drawer, whatever. But I decided, I really like these socks. I haven't worn them all that much. I wanted to go ahead and darn it, as well as I had just watched Devin on Knitting McPurley go through her Bob Ross style darning, as she calls it, where she darns on camera a sock for herself. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. So here you can kind of even see I have a little bit of a tail that I didn't get woven in very well there, but I did go ahead and darn a bit of a hole that I had right here in the toe of the sock. And I thought, great, I've fixed it. I can go on with my day. I can go on with wearing these socks and keeping them in my sock drawer for a little bit longer. And then lo and behold, throughout the course of the day, you know where this is going, the second sock got a hole. And oh man, it's not a little hole. It got a huge blowout. So what I have resolved to do here is, rather than try to darn this, especially since it's quite large, I realized that probably what was going on with these socks is the body of the sock has a really nice solid yarn. I really like the quality of the yarn. It's nice and comfortable. It feels like it's holding up very well. But the yarn that's in the toes seems to be a little bit thin, a little threadbare, maybe I should say, and just not holding up as well. Now, I don't think it's necessarily because of the way that I wear my socks that the holes are blowing, or that the toes are blowing out, but the body isn't. I have a feeling it has to do with the difference in socks, or difference in yarn, excuse me. So I have decided at this point, and you can even see on this sock, don't mind the dog hair that you might see as well, but you can start to see there's some thinning even on that toe right in here, that if I continue trying to just darn these and fix the existing yarn, I'm going to keep getting blowouts. And the body of the sock is still in such good shape that I really don't want to just toss these yet. So I will be knitting new toes and then Kitchenering them on this sock. That's a bit of a work in progress, but because I didn't have a whole lot of woohoo, I made it. I wanted to show you how excited I was to have darned this first sock. So now this is a work in progress, and don't we all have projects like that we think, yay, we're done, we can move on. And nope, here it goes back into the works in progress pile. But I will work to get those socks done, I don't know, by St. Patrick's Day next year, hopefully. I've had so much fun dyeing this yarn for Match That Yarn. This has been a project that started back in October of last year and is finally at its completion. I'm so excited, and I get to talk about it with you guys today. So let me share with you a little bit of this process. First of all, Match That Yarn was an idea of mine that just kind of came to me all of a sudden because I've heard so many times, oh, wouldn't it be cool if there was a yarn that matched this photo? Or I love the colors in this photo. A yarn like this would be so neat. Or how many times I've looked at a picture and thought, oh, I'd just love to take some time to dye some yarn that way. So I know that if I have thoughts that way, many of you have thoughts that way as well, that there's probably pictures that you've either seen or maybe have in your camera reel that you think would make a beautiful yarn. And you know, not everyone's a yarn dyer. Not everyone's going to take the time to do that. So I thought, what a fun thing for me as a yarn dyer to do, to make that an opportunity for you guys to share your photos that you think would make beautiful yarns, or something that you think would just inspire me as a dyer. And it really has inspired me. Oh my goodness, it has been so much fun to dye these yarns. I have loved every moment of this. Unfortunately, Match That Yarn got set to the side because of sickness and holidays and so many things. The timing wasn't right, but the project was. And I'm so excited that I got back to it and then finally made this happen, because it has been fun for me, and I hope it's been fun for you all as well. So I am going to start by walking you through the yarns that I dyed and the images that inspired them. I want to explain a little bit of my process just so you can understand why I pulled the colors I did, or a little bit of how the colors resulted, because sometimes things don't turn out exactly like I, as the dyer, expect them to. So let's go ahead and look through some of these yarns. I'm going to start with one that was a fan favorite for a photo. This photo got mentioned many times right off the bat. This is the Vibrant Iris, and this photo is gorgeous. It came from Joe in Australia, but this iris is just, it's striking, the colors in it. So when I went to dye the yarn, and you can see here, I decided to, I really wanted some depth of color in the main body of the yarn. So it's a highly tonal yarn, but then it has these shocks of bright purple, kind of a blue purple. So it's a bit of an indigo purple with orange in it. And let me just open this up here. This yarn turned out really, really fun. I think that it will be so neat knit up, because it's going to have where those pops of color come out. There's actually some patterns right now that are out that have where you knit along, and then when you come to that pop of color, you create, oh man, I'm going to forget what they're called right now. I'll look it up and put what it's called down on the Another popular fan favorite for not only the photo, but also the finished yarn has been Geyser Beauty. So Geyser Beauty is a photo taken by Sharon in Yellowstone National Park. That is a geyser that you can find if you travel through Yellowstone. I'm not absolutely sure which one this is, because there's a couple that appear kind of like this in Yellowstone. But this one is just beautiful blues. And then I definitely wanted to catch the surrounding landscape, because this is not the ocean. These colors can be found in the ocean, but it is because of the surrounding landscape that this makes this so dramatic in Yellowstone. So Geyser Beauty, again, let me open this up. It has a nice tonality of those blues where they shift and change. And then this one, because the way the colors land on this yarn, if this was being used in socks, it would make a nice micro striping yarn. So this would be a really fun yarn to knit and see those stripes come out. I put little speckles of black on this yarn, again, just to demonstrate the surrounding kind of ruggedness that you find in Yellowstone when you see these geysers. So this is definitely a favorite. The next one we'll look at is Sea Sunrise. Let's see, let me get these. There's a couple of these that get really close to each other, so I have to be very particular when I pull them out of the pile. Sea Sunrise is a gorgeous ocean photo, and I'm not positive if this was sunrise or sunset, but again, just the colors here are so beautiful. And this one was a trick to dye. This one took a lot of thinking through, how am I going to create the different colors without them bleeding into each other so much. In the top of this photo, I'm going to look at the photo a minute here with you. In the top of the photo, you can see there's a blue and a pink that has a tendency to look purplish, but you still see distinctly blue and pink. So I didn't want the blues and pinks to blend into each other so much that you lost them and they became purple. And then in the bottom of the picture, there's purples and grays and blues. And again, there's so much color. There's so much depth of color in this image that it's really hard to know how to make this really stand out. And then certainly the sun with the yellow and the orange tones that come from it. So my resulting yarn, this is Sea Sunrise. And the yarn itself is just full of color and depth. And while the colors didn't turn out exactly like what I had in my mind, my biggest challenges here were trying to get a yellow that wasn't going to turn green, because yellow next to blue, it's going to often bleed into itself and turn green. And then I also wanted pinks and blues that weren't going to go into each other too much, making too much purple. So this was a challenging yarn to do, especially to match. This guy is probably the hardest thing to match by far for me, but I had a lot of fun. I think the resulting yarn is very pretty. I think it would knit up really neat. I think this would be a fun yarn to put with like a solid or a semi-tonal yarn and just really make the colors of this yarn pop. So that was, again, just a super fun yarn to work on. I mean, I'm gonna keep saying that because honestly, they've all been so much fun to work on, and what I learned from each of them is kind of unique to each yarn, but definitely a fun project and fun process. All right, let's next go to Purple Aster. Purple Aster felt like it was a little bit more straightforward, but honestly, I found that it was harder to get the purple that I was going for than I thought it was going to be. So with Purple Aster, this is such an Easter spring happy yarn. I love the resulting yarn for this one. It was, again, just very, very strong colors, but as you all know, purple and yellow next to each other can turn brown. So being very careful to try not to let the bleeding happen too much, I tried to make sure that there was a definite purple or definite yellow and a definite purple. And this is a nice light kind of lilac-y purple. I like the color. I think that it almost looks like when I hold the yarn just straight as a skein, like this is the center of the flower and then this is the petal coming out. So it turned out to be very pretty. I, again, played with this one a lot more than I thought I would, but this yarn, again, because the way that the colors are laid out on the yarn, would make for a really nice micro striping type yarn in a sock set. So that's Purple Aster. Let's see, where do we go next? Let's do this one. This one, Sunset Surf. All right, this photo is again full of depth and color. I saw lots of colors here and I tried really hard to pull these out. My resulting yarn was not quite what I thought it would be when I was looking at the photo. So the colors here ended up being beautiful. I love the colors that resulted on the yarn, but they just weren't the depth of color that I was anticipating or striving for to match this photo. I don't know if it's because I just didn't go rich enough with the color or if I was so nervous about colors bleeding over and kind of like I was saying with Sea Sunrise. I'm not sure why I ended up with something so different than what I had in my head. But let's look at the yarn for a minute because Sunset Surf, while it's not matching the photo quite as much as I wish it were, the colors still are just gorgeous. I love these colors and I don't know if the camera is going to pick up all the depth of color here, but there is that kind of a peach tone with the yellow golden colors, and then I tried to pull out the sky where it's got a kind of a stormy gray blue up here, and then the water itself had kind of a green, but it also had the waves and the color of the waves in it, so it has green with the lighter tones there. And I really like how the yarn came out, even though it didn't quite match the inspiration photo like I had originally intended. But that is Sunset Surf. Next up, let's look at Magical. So Magical is another one that out of the 12 photos that were chosen, and remember, these were not all photos that I chose. My family assisted in the process of choosing which pictures for me to try to match. But with Magical, similar to Sunset Surf, I ended up with a little bit less robust color than what I had envisioned that I was going to do. And again, I don't know if it's just that when you're trying to pull colors out of a photo, you want them to be distinct and identifiable. And if you get too much saturation, you feel like you're going to lose some of that. So in Magical, I kind of ended up with the same thing, that I was trying to work so hard at maintaining some of the colors that I think I didn't quite saturate as much as I should have. And when I went back to look at the photo again, I realized that I really probably should have added some royal blue in there. And I don't know where I was that day. I don't know what happened with me on this one, but yet again, regardless of it not being as much of a match with the photo as I would have liked, I still love the resulting yarn. So this one is a fun, very kind of little girl looking pastel that resulted, and yet it's not overwhelmingly little girl, I guess. There's a, I don't know, like almost an earthiness to it that comes in some of these golden tones. Here, let's see if I can show that there. And the pink, while it's pink, it's not like ballerina pink. It's like this dusty, beautiful pink. The greens have, and blues, the turquoise here, the aqua, again, with the golden tones overlaying, it just created kind of this soft, warm pastel palette. And I think this would be so much fun in a sweater, even for myself. Like, I think these colors could be really pretty worked up in a sweater project. So while the yarn did not match the inspiration like I had hoped, I actually really like the resulting yarn. And I think this one would be one, much like we saw with the Sea Sunrise or any of these that have lots of color in it. I think that as you knit, I think those colors coming out just are so much fun. That's the fun of hand-dyed yarns lots of times, is those individual little bits of color coming through in your work as you're going. Kind of like my Frothy pullover and the way that I was showing you with the Lush Woodbine that I'm using on that yarn, that colorway. It just, those pops of color come out in the patterning of the stitches. And I think that Magical would do that amazingly well. I really like the resulting yarn from that dye. All right, to go with that, because we were talking about this kind of a dusky rose, or let's see, let me pull that back here again, because I just want to show how well these go together. I love these two yarns together. I think they are so pretty. So this one is called Dusky Rose. Now, when I look at the picture of this on my website, I don't know that the color is doing it justice, because the Dusky Rose, the inspiration photo here has a kind of a warm cream or like a very light tan color in the rose, but then it has these pops of pink on the tips of the rose petals. And I wanted to, that's what intrigued me most about this image, is that it has these tones that are just this little hint of pink. And so when I dyed this yarn, I wanted it to be the same way, just more of a hint of pink. And so it's definitely pink throughout, but it is a very soft, very warm pink. And then if you look at the yarn up close, let me open one of these. I've put spots of more intense pink color, just as you see on the tips of the yarn here. Let's see, like in here, there's little spots of more intense color throughout this yarn that match those tips of the petals on that rose. So again, just a beautiful yarn. I think that this one is such a great tonal yarn that would work so well. Let me show it here again with Magical as a coordinating yarn. And these two, Magical and Dusky Rose, just go really, really nicely together. All right. Let's go to the next here. This is Iron and Sulfur. Again, this is a photo by Sharon taken here just in Yellowstone. And I kind of struggled with the name for this one at first, but I think Iron and Sulfur is fitting because the rust tones that you see here, I would imagine are being created by iron that's in the soil. And then when you're driving through Yellowstone, one of the distinct things that you get to enjoy is the smell of sulfur because of the hot springs. So this would be a hot springs area that has created this image. I'm not exactly sure of what all is going on or exactly where Sharon might have taken this photo, but I, again, just wanted to capture as many of the colors as possible without overwhelming the yarn so much with color that you lose the individual colors. So Iron and Sulfur is a very soft palette, but of each of the colors that you see in that photo. So I did capture a little bit of the surrounding ground with some of the greens that you see here. And then as you go down the yarn, you see the rust tones, and then into this kind of a warm, soft peach or soft orange color. And anyway, I had a lot of fun dyeing this, and I actually think that the resulting yarn for this one is one that captures a lot of people's eye because it is it's almost more neutral. It almost reads more neutral than being any one color in particular. But I love how this resulted. I've had lots of people comment on Iron and Sulfur, and yeah, I think that one turned out very well as well. Next up, I'm gonna look at one that coordinates again with Iron and Sulfur quite well, or even with Geyser Beauty. So this is Soft Bark. Now, Soft Bark is an inspiration photo that doesn't have all the depth of color that so many of these photos do, but I love how it has kind of these warm gray tones and cool gray tones both in the same image, and then just the little bits of depth of color with some of the like speckling or whatever you may call it in the bark, just the shadows of the little pitting and stuff in the bark. So I liked, especially in this photo, how there are these different shades on something as simple as the bark of a tree. So again, in my yarn, and I feel like this one did a really good job of matching the inspiration photo. I worked very hard to make sure that there are some of those warm tone grays as well as the cool tone grays in this. And they're very, very subtle, but they are there. And I think that that's something that you can appreciate more in person, certainly. I don't know if the camera is going to pick that up very well, but here, let's see. If I hold like this section here, you've got a little bit more warm over here and cool over here. And then of course the speckling throughout. But I think that in a project, this would, again, just be such a great yarn to work with because it's a nice neutral and yet it has still depth of color and interest. So sometimes neutrals can be boring maybe to work with, but when it's a hand-dyed neutral like this, and with that little bit of color change and variant and also the speckles in there, it just makes it a lot more pleasurable to work with because as you're working, you're getting to experience that instead of it just being a consistent neutral color on a project. So this one, I'm gonna hold up here the wound skein with Geyser Beauty. Don't those go together so nicely? I love these two yarns together. And then also, if you wanted, it could go with the Iron and Sulfur, or even this one looks very nice with Sunset Surf. Again, just some really fun colors in there that make it, because it's a neutral, it just goes so well with so many things. So that was a fun one to get done with because I love the resulting yarn. All right, this next one is just a sweet finish. This is Blush in Flowers. I loved the soft kind of peachy pink tones that you see in here with these little pops of mauve throughout. So the resulting yarn here again is just a sweet pink. This would be a very, very pretty baby outfit, or I think even for myself, again, pink tones work well with my skin. So I think that a sweater in these colors would be really pretty. So there's pink throughout with little hints of that mauve just thrown in on it. And the pink is tonal, so there are parts that are quite light in color, but this yarn was a fun one to work. Let's see, I'm gonna show it next to the Dusky Rose here really quick, just so you can see the difference. Dusky Rose has just a little bit more warmth. There's a little more browns in it throughout, where the blush in color in flowers is a little more pink, has some of those purple tones in it. But again, both of them very fun and unique in their own way. All right, another one. This was one of my challenging ones. Again, it was a sky inspiration photo. I tried for depth of color here, but again, trying really, really hard to do depth of color without a bleed over that caused the colors to change too dramatically. So this is Sky Fire. And this one, the challenge that I had here is that I wanted to capture the shadows that you see on the sides because they kind of frame the image. But at the same time, I wanted to make sure that I was catching those distinct colors that you see in the sky. So there's purple and there's blue and there's pink and there's peach and there's all these bright colors of really bright yellow, and anyway, all these colors in the sky, and trying to get all of those colors to show on the yarn without one color burying the other colors too much. Because of course, again, if I get too much of the yellow next to the blue, I end up with green, or if I get too much of the pink next to the blue, I end up with a purple. And I wanted some of that, but I don't want too much of that to where I lose the color throughout. So Sky Fire is another one of these dramatic colors. Let me open this one for you. That throughout the yarn, there's just a constant color change. And this one, again, would just be a very fun yarn to knit up because it has just so many colors. I mean, here, I'm going to try and show this section alone just to kind of focus in on all the colors that you see right in there. So, I mean, there's so many different tones and so many hues that you can appreciate in this yarn, that I think that as you would work with this yarn, you would be able to just really enjoy the process of working this yarn up. So this one, again, was a bit of a trick to dye matching the inspiration photo, but the resulting yarn is just gorgeous here. I've got to show, again, just all the colors that you see here on this yarn, or down here at the bottom. So many colors. Anyway, so very, very fun. Sky Fire. I loved working that one. Now I'm going to end with probably my most challenging yarn, which is kind of surprising. The picture seems a little bit basic and maybe not all that unique. I don't know. But when it came to dyeing this yarn, I had to redo this actually 3 times to get to where I was happy with it. And I still don't know if I completely nailed it, but I had fun working through the process anyway. This is Bottle Brush. So in the photo, you can see that the picture has green, definitely a really noticeable green base with yellow kind of around that. And then those pops of color throughout with kind of this neon, it's hard to call what to call this. Like, I don't know what to call this color. It's kind of a pinkish, reddish, orangish, really hard color to describe. And my challenge with this is that I wanted to first try to catch those little nips on the end, the little pips of color, I guess, that you see. But in my first try at that, it did not go well. So I decided to kind of abandon that and instead just focus on the color and try to capture that color. The challenge with this photo is that the color is almost translucent. So as the light goes through this flower, it creates a kind of a depth that you can't quite capture on yarn the same way, because when I'm adding pigment to yarn, they are very solid colors. It's opaque, going on an opaque surface. So where this flower has a transparency to it, it allows light to pass through it in such a way that when I try to capture that on yarn, it was so hard for me to do. So here's Bottle Brush. And as I finish this, I still love the resulting yarn, but man, this was probably my most tricky yarn to match. You can see I did do the ends here with the greens and the yellows, And just to echo or mimic that, the base, the stem of that flower. And then going up from there, I started out with something that looked more pink initially, and I wasn't happy with that. So I added some more orange to it, and I ended up with kind of a peach. You can see that I still have the areas of resist that I had put on there to try to show the little pips. But ultimately, the yarn that resulted is still very beautiful. I think it would be a lot of fun to work with. It's a really unique yarn. But wow, Bottle Brush was, I think, by far the hardest yarn for me to work with. So those are the yarns, and I am sure you guys are all waiting with bated breath to find out who the winner is. So there were going to be, from this competition, from Match This Yarn, or Match That Yarn, this game of inspiration, there are 2 winners. The first is a winner chosen by you based on the number of votes received, and the second is a winner chosen by me. And what's going to happen with this yarn, I'll tell you about that in a moment. But with no further ado, the winner of Match That Yarn with the most votes is Danielle. Congratulations. She submitted the photo that I called Sea Sunrise, and this is her resulting yarn. So Danielle will get to receive these 2 yarns. These are on my slope sock base. I should say that for all of the yarn that I've just shown, this is all on my slope sock base, an 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon, 2-ply yarn that is fingering weight. So Danielle will be receiving her winning yarn, as well as an opportunity to pick out a hexagon pouch from my shop that I will be sending her. And anyway, congratulations, Danielle. So I am so excited for everyone that participated. Thank you all. Now I get to choose and select my judge's choice. And this one was one that I chose maybe because of some of my own loves of color, like what my own interests are in color, maybe because it's a little near and dear to my heart, but I chose Geyser Beauty. So this photo was submitted by Sharon. Congratulations, Sharon. I love how this yarn dyed up. I loved the inspiration photo, and I love the fact that this is representative of Yellowstone, which is just outside my door and is celebrating 150 years this year. So I am super excited to have dyed up Geyser Beauty for this project, and Sharon will be receiving the winning yarn from this inspiration dye. Now, what's going to happen with the remaining yarns? So I obviously have a lot of yarn because I dyed 24 skeins of this yarn for this project and for this game. So I actually have something coming that is going to be a part of how I'm handling this yarn. So first of all, what I'm going to say is the yarns will become available. They are not going to be immediately available for purchase, but they are going to come available for purchase. And why I put it that way is because I have a new project that I'm working on that I'm going to have you guys assist me in. So let's go ahead and talk. Let's see. I don't want to leave out my acquisitions this time, but I do want to talk about this project that I have going on that I've been working on for a little bit. I think I'm going to go ahead and tell you about my acquisitions and then stick around to the end. And when I talk about Til Next Time, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I've been working on and how you get to be a part of this with me. So let's start with thanks for the encouragement. These are my newest acquisitions. So I already showed, and I'm going to put a picture up here, my stitch marker that I got from Hey Country Creations. That was a fun little treat to receive in the mail, and I so enjoyed getting that, and then, like I say, putting that to use right away. And the next thing that I received is actually something that there is a company in Arkansas, called Arkansas Yarn Co. And I was intrigued with some of what her business is, as well as she just contributed to a podcast that I've been enjoying listening to, called Maker's Gonna Sell. And I'll post a link to that because that podcast has been so encouraging to me as a maker in this community. That podcast is hosted by the two makers one behind Avery Lane Creations and the other from Hypnotic Yarn. And they did a wholesale conversation with Lori of Arkansas Yarn Company. So I was intrigued with what Lori had to share. I really appreciated her coming on the podcast and sharing some of the stuff that she did. So I made sure to support her. And to do that, what I did is I participated in her monthly yarn club. Let's see, I think it's a monthly sock yarn club that she did. And I just purchased the month of March. I didn't sign up for ongoing, but I did go ahead and purchase her March yarn and was so excited. This is the yarn that she dyed for March. This is called Magically Delicious. It is on her Yummy High Twist, which is an 85% superwash merino, 15% nylon. And it's a super squishy, fun yarn that's got these speckles of color on this nice mint green. So Magically Delicious makes me think that it was inspired by Lucky Charms, and it kind of makes me think of the color of the milk. As you let the marshmallows sit in the bowl of cereal, they tend to start to turn the milk green, it seems like. So that's what this makes me think of. I'm not sure if that's what her inspiration was, but I really enjoyed getting her yarn in that kit for her sock club or sock set, the monthly club that she did. She also puts in some little extras. So here's a collagen crystal eye mask that she included. Arkansas Yarn Co. resin stitch marker. Here, let's put it on that side. It's in the shape of Arkansas, but it has some little shamrocks and speckles like glitter in there. And then a just fun bracelets, colorful bracelets. Again, I'm sure to be inspired, kind of a leprechaun inspiration, colorful bracelet. And then some tea. Anyway, it was a fun kit to receive. So that was fun to support her, especially after she puts the work that she did into the Maker's Gonna Sell podcast and sharing her wealth of knowledge, being a business owner, a shop store owner, as well as a yarn dyer. Another acquisition I made is not knitting related, but another maker that I came across recently on the internet. This is Wilder Boutique. Erica is the owner of Wilder Boutique, and she made these beautiful clay earrings. I honestly haven't even opened these up yet because I wanted to show them on the podcast before I wore them, but aren't they fun? She does a lot of different designs and styles, so I'm not sure that there's any more of this particular style in her shop. But again, her shop will be listed below, and she has some really cute clay earrings. Excuse me. I really liked these. They have a really fun texture. Like, I don't know if you can see the texture on them, but they have a very fun texture to them. So that was a fun little acquisition that I purchased for myself. And then this next acquisition was actually a gift. I worked one day at my local yarn shop while the owner was in New Mexico. And so while she was gone, she picked up a few little goodies for me, which was fun. Here is from the Abiqui Dye Studio. Abiqui? Okay, I am not from New Mexico. This is obviously the name of the town. Abiqui. Wow, I'm going to totally butcher that one no matter how many times I try, so I guess I should stop. Anyway, this is some of their heritage. This is Churro Wool. So it's a completely natural wool, and it's dyed with cochineal, or cochineal. So this actually comes from a bug. It's a beetle that only the females have this rich color. So they squish the bugs to get the color, and then they dye the yarn. So I imagine that you can find the dye dried and in a powdered form at this point in time, but it originally comes from those beetles. So that was very fun. And then she also picked up for me this cube of silk. So they're kind of like their silk hankies, if anyone knows what a silk hanky is. So let's see, they've been kind of squished and manipulated probably in the dyeing process, but if I pull these out, you can kind of start to see that it's probably multiple hankies put together. So a single hanky is the result of one mulberry silk moth, and this is all mulberry silk. So mulberry silk just means that that's what they consumed, what the moths consumed while they were in the process of preparing to build their cocoons. And this is some of the resulting silk, but it's in all of these fun colors. So I'm super excited to play with this. Just so much color, and I've not yet spun silk, so I'm looking forward to that for sure. One more acquisition that I have that I want to share really quick is, as I said, I spin with a group of ladies in town. I don't get there they have once a month that they spin together. I don't get there every month to spin, but I do enjoy it when I get to go because they have a wealth of knowledge, and I learned so much from them, and it's just really fun to go. But here you can see that I'm holding weaving because there's a number of the same ladies also meet and get together to discuss the weaving that they do. And again, I go to those meetings if I can. I don't often get to them, and since I'm such a new weaver, I usually get to the spinning meetings more frequently than I do the weaving meetings. But again, they meet once a month. Well, at the most recent weaving meeting, there was a weaver that had all of these sample weaves that she was getting rid of. She just wanted to get rid of them. She's like, if someone doesn't take them, I'm throwing them away. All right, so I had a bit of an interruption, and now that I'm going to finish this podcast, lighting has changed, but if you'll bear with me, I'm going to go ahead and finish recording so that I can get this out to you guys tomorrow. I know a number of you are waiting on some of the details in this podcast, so I want to go ahead and finish. But I was talking about these weaving samples that I received from a weaver at a group that meets in Cody, and what she apparently had done is that she went ahead and dressed her loom with a white warp, and then she was sampling different colors of threads for her weft. So you can see here that here's the white on this side that demonstrates the pattern, and then on this one it has a black, this one's kind of a fuchsia, and then purple and a blue. Anyway, they are all the same pattern, but she was just playing with it and probably trying to sample the colors is my guess more than anything. But she had this whole pile of weaving samples that she just stashed away for a while and decided she was cleaning out, she was ready to get rid of them. So she asked if anyone in the group was interested in them, and I think they're beautiful. I think they're just so fun. So I decided, she said, anyone can take them, just take them, do whatever you want with them. I think what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to turn them into some bags. So probably just small little pouches, but I think I'm going to try making a few different bags with them, and we'll see how they turn out. So I think they're so fun. It's amazing to me that people can do this kind of work on a loom. Till next time, I am starting a Patreon page. So for anyone that's not familiar with Patreon is a way that you can support makers or creatives by donating money, or in my situation, it's not just pure donations. Some of the levels have, you're buying into almost like a club, I guess. So I'm starting a Patreon page, and the reason for this, and this is the exciting news, is that I am working towards gaining a new dye studio space. I initially started dyeing in my garage, I initially started dyeing in my kitchen. Over the course of this past year, I moved to my garage. It's a good space, and I'm so thankful for that space, but I'm finding that it is already starting to be limited in what I'm able to accomplish in there. So I'm looking into moving into a new studio space. And with that, of course, that takes funding to make that a possibility. But it also is going to be a bit of a process that I'd love to share with you guys. So rather than it being a regular part of my podcast, because my podcast is really for me to show my makes and some of my shop progress with the yarns that I'm dyeing and working on. But my dye studio is a lot more than just the pretty yarn or the projects that I make. My dye studio also encompasses the cinch cord dyeing that I do. It's the work of managing a studio. It's all the behind the scenes stuff that goes with that. So I decided that the best way to do this would be to open a Patreon account, set up a Patreon, a page, a way for you guys, for anyone that's interested, I should say, to support me in the process as I head towards gaining a new studio space. With that, I'll be producing content that is for patrons only. And also with that, I'm looking at producing almost like a monthly subscription. So if you're a yarn lover that wants to have a more consistent yarn coming from Sweet Mountain Crafts, there is a level that you can purchase at for Patreon that would give you the opportunity to receive a monthly sock set. So at this point in time, those sock sets are going to be dyed on my Scree sock base, plateau, or DK. I'm going to have the 3 options available. So I am just working on getting that all set up. I will link the Patreon page down below, and I will be starting to promote that here in the next, probably really within the next week, because my plan is to have that page active and going live for April, because I already have something in mind for patrons for the month of April. And I want to make that something that I can start driving attention that direction and start to show you guys what I have planned with that page. And it won't take away from the fact that I'll continue doing my Fibercast here on YouTube, but I am going to be putting more content and added content on my Patreon page that you won't find here available at YouTube. So anyway, that's an exciting adventure. I'm super excited about where I'm hoping to go with the studio space. I look forward to sharing that with you guys. And then I look forward to sharing even further for my patrons some of the things that I'm going to be doing. I think I've covered everything that I was supposed to. If not, I'll catch it next time, I suppose. So in the meantime, I hope you're all doing well. I hope that the end of March is very fun, and that I know some are starting to experience spring weather and enjoying warmer days. And I hope you enjoy soaking up sun where you are, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.